All right, welcome. Hey, it's the Genesee County Compassion Club show. We're glad to be here today, coming to you live from flinttalkradio.com, broadcasting on Ustream.tv.
Where the winter never seems to end.
Exactly. Hey, I've got Eric Gunnels in the studio with me today. How you doing, sir?
Good, Jeremy.
Good to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Awesome. We're going to be talking about some issues going on here in the state, talking about medical marijuana, of course, talking about what's going on in the House and the Senate, and give you updates from around the country as to what's going on in the world of medical marijuana. Man, you're not kidding. Winter just will not release its grip.
No. We're on record now of being the longest snow covering and duration of winter for any season now.
Almost broke that streak yesterday. Did you guys enjoy your spring? Because it was yesterday.
Yeah. Another 4 to 6 weeks, we'll just go from winter to summer.
Yeah. Like negative 21 day, 80 the next.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, man, it's nasty outside. You got drifting. The road crew said, we ain't working. Screw this snow.
Yep.
They already took spring break, so they're gone. And here we are left to drift away.
Oh, man.
But, hey, man, we did have some stuff happen down at the Senate this last week. Mr. Gunnels was there to witness the Senate hearing. They're talking about the Provisioning Center Act and also the Medical bills.
Yep.
Bill,
right.
Medical bill.
Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah. Before or after Medibles. But, yeah, we want to get an update. So tell us what happened down there at the Senate, if you would.
Well, I thought that the testimony was good. I thought that, first thing that's kind of surprised us, but I guess maybe if you look at the bigger picture, it's not so surprising, is that the state police, their representative, the woman there that come to give her the opinions of the state police, just seemed a bit more. It just seemed like the first time that they came there to testify, which at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, they seemed to be like more pro this legislation, and then she kind of came back this time and was like more. She added more things to it and kind of threw out some more debatable material. For example, she said that, she says, well, we're concerned because it's a cash-based industry, so, increase of crime, potential of harm, a lot of cash, banks won't let them, conduct their business there, which is not really entirely true because in Colorado there's, there's actually recent banking institutions have been coming around to this and letting people do banking involved in medical marijuana states. So that's not entirely true. That was kind of an exaggeration. And then, mentioned something about insurance, like, that you can't get insurance for dispensaries and stuff like that. But that's not entirely true either because some insurance companies offer insurance for that too.
What does that have to do
and
with
that's exactly my point, and that was my next point, Jeremy. It's like, what does that have to do with any kind of
policing
or even to do with a warrant or when they come to your place or just a knock and search or whatever? It's like they do the whole what's the insurance? What does your insurance policy have anything to do with your?
Unless you're driving your dispensary down the road.
Right. I mean you got coverage for that? I mean, are you covered? Oh, you're covered. You're good.
That's PPLDD.
Right. So, I thought was out of left field, and I submitted an application to speak, and I was going to try to rebuttal a few of those things that she had mentioned and all that, especially in the increasing crime thing. She's mentioned the major cities, and Flint was one of them, and I just said, I come from the Genesee County, Flint area, and we've got, provisioning centers or whatever you want to call them all around the county of Genesee County.
Yeah, in fact, actually, one of the people from Montrose.
Yeah, well, the mayor
was there talking about it.
Yes, the mayor of Montrose. Yeah. Yes, and his attitude was quite plausible. He actually. He took a positive stance on it. And I thought it was very, very productive. What he said, I mean, even though he suggested he doesn't want his community or his city to become like marijuana capital of Michigan, he still believes that safe access is important and that he doesn't block anything for that. And plus, he gave a related story too about his niece, I believe it was.
Yeah, like he has his own family member who needs the medicine.
Yep. So that was good. It was a good. Yep.
Oh, that's good.
Yep.
So the state police a little bit, more.
Yeah, just had some out of left field.
Opposition to the bill.
Yeah, opposition, but out of left field though. I thought that just didn't really have much merit to it. I don't think so.
So they're worried about having cash-based businesses.
Well, yeah.
And then they're worried about
whether
I can get insurance.
What I wanted to tell her was, look, we've had 5 dispensaries in my local area, and in the past 4 years, and not even a punch has been thrown in those places, and yet there's a bank right between them that's been robbed at gunpoint. So I mean, and I mean, like,
those cash-based businesses.
Those cash-based businesses she was talking about. So I mean, like if you're going to target a cash-based business, I mean, obviously you're going to go for the bank over the dispensary, and clearly that was the example here. Yes. I'm just saying.
Odd.
Yeah. So odd questioning about that. I think.
All right. So at any rate, what was the rhetoric about the medibles bill?
Oh, I think that
I heard that they had something to do with it. They weren't sure. The police wouldn't have the ability to test how much is in there.
Yeah,
something to that effect.
Yeah, but I thought that yeah, but I mean, really, I mean, if it comes with a label, it's medical marijuana. It's in the possession of a person who has a license in the registry program. Do we need to go any further than that? I mean, is it really? I mean, what
I mean, I guess on one hand, playing devil's advocate for the police, I could understand. Let's say you pull somebody over and they've got 8 totes in the back of their truck, and they're all chuck full of brownies.
Oh, yeah.
And, how do you tell how much medication, how much weed is in all of that?
But then they would be properly labeled, though. I mean,
how do you know that that's the case? And I think that's what the police were saying is, even if they are labeled, we don't have the ability to test and see. Is it accurate? Is the person within their limit? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and she mentioned something else about strengths and things like that too, but I think those are really irrelevant too, because that's all.
It's either protected or it's not.
Right.
It's not like the 20% weighs more than the 14%.
Right.
So
I don't know.
I don't know. I think that if they're gonna bring up that argument, they're almost shooting themselves in the foot, because then at that point we could stop arguing about how much. What the legal limit is, and we can start arguing about, I see you have a jar of dried flowers there, but how much medication is on those dried flowers?
Right, yeah.
This is only 12% weed, 12% THC or THC acids.
Right.
And we got to deduct, the other 88% of weight out of this dried flower.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. So I think they're kind of going down a slippery slope there without even realizing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also, just want to point out too, there's no scientific foundational evidence or platform to base this sort of a debate on. You know what I mean? Like we're not there yet. We're not breaking the plant down to its trichomes and things like that. So we're not.
I've had people ask me too, opponents of medical marijuana. We don't know the dosage, and I went, that like the stuff you take every day for your blood pressure medicines, your dilatins, whatever for epilepsy or whatever. There's no real consistent dosage. The levels of the potency and stuff like that is not always established either.
Yeah, so I say 2 to 4.
Yeah.
Right, and yeah. I mean, it obviously is going to vary on the person. I mean, and when taking any medication, I think you have to consider times of day, what your activities are for the rest of the day, when was the last time you ate. These are all.
They always leave that up. Whether prescription based or not, it's always there's always a variance in there for the patient. Every 4 to 6 hours. 1 to 3 pills, whatever it is.
Right.
That person can assess for themselves. Okay, how much do I need of this? And I think you got to take that into account. But again, getting back to the whole argument of, I know one of the other things the state police talked about at that hearing was, they wouldn't be able to tell if it was CBD based medicine or if it was THC, that they don't have the ability to test for that.
Right.
And I thought that was kind of funny. Like, why would it even matter? It's all under the same, category and so forth. And then I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Because if they've been testing for THC in all of these criminal cases over the past, 30 years, they don't have the ability to figure out the potency of this stuff? You're telling me that the state police crime lab doesn't have a gas chromatograph?
Well, it's interesting.
Really?
Yeah. Well, that's funny. that's interesting.
Really?
You say that. That's because I don't like. I think what they.
I mean, you watch CSI and everything. You're like, they can analyze anything.
Yeah. Oh, we got this down to a science.
And then when they talk, well, no, we can't.
Yeah. Thought it was a leaf. Well, it could be a stem.
You got small little businesses running around the state, that offer testing,
right.
But yet the state police crime lab can't. I don't know. It just seems like kind of far-fetched. Yeah. And again, getting into arguments that they don't even fully understand.
Right.
And sometimes...
Well, I seen that Jamie Fricke's case in Lapeer. I was at... Michael Comorn was handling that case in Lapeer for Jamie. And I was there. I witnessed that case. And one of the questions was brought to the forensics... person that tested the marijuana, and then Michael asked her on the witness stand, did you consider these aspects, or he was referring to the plants that were pulled out of a pot,
yes.
Had roots on them, hanging upside down, drying, and he said, do you consider that a plant? And she goes, well, no. And then he goes, well, then what are you basing your evidence on? What are you basing that on? What scientific, or established protocol do you? She says, on the witness stand, she says, oh, well, we don't really have one. It's just what we agree upon at the place at the lab. At the lab. That's just what my coworkers and we agree upon. I mean, it's just like that it really? I mean, it's just.
I mean, I know they have a set definition for figuring out whether or not something is marijuana.
Yes, right.
But they don't have one to figure out if it is a plant.
Well, that's where I thought he was going with this. But yet, I thought that the state lab did have that in place. But yet, when she's just the testing person, she goes, "Well, we don't actually decide that." And he says,
okay.
"Well, then who filled out the paperwork? Then you said it was not a plant. You know what I mean? Well, where'd you come up with that? You know what I mean? Like, she says, well, we just we agree upon amongst ourselves. I mean, it's like, so there's no, there's a lack of scientific footing. You know what I mean?
Well,
to base these things.
Some kind of protocol set.
You would think, but it's I don't know. It's just weird. Her testimony just seemed wishy-washy too.
Huh. Well, it does. I mean, the state definitely has to have a set guideline for criminal prosecutions when it comes to marijuana, and then what they need to have is a set guideline for processing medical marijuana cases.
Right.
And I think that's where the breakdown is that
Sure.
we don't have that in place for police, and we certainly don't have it for the prosecution, process thereafter, such as like in the crime lab or in the prosecution itself.
Sure.
And I think certain questions like that when it comes to measuring. The amounts of cannabis present in an edible form or some other type of form other than dried flowers, it brings the question up. And also, in cases where we're dealing with plants, if someone has a tray of clones, the question is, are these cuttings or are these plants?
Right.
And there isn't a set protocol, by the state to determine, for those people involved, what is what.
Sure.
And at some point, you're right. They're kind of, it's leaving it up to the officers involved, or maybe some sort of consortium at the people at the lab, all agreeing on one thing. But I've seen a number of different cases where there has been disparities or discrepancies in the number of plants that were being charged, towards the
right.
the assailant or the criminal, whatever you want to call him. But anyway, like the officers counted this many, the lab had this many, and the defendant says he had this many.
Sure.
How can we have such a different amount going on here when we're talking about something as simple as a plant?
Right.
But at any rate, I think that's something that needs to be looked at. It's something that's got to be handled at an administrative level. That's for certain. And leaving it open to a case-by-case basis, it kind of puts a lot of people in jeopardy because you might have something go down in a certain area where they're more, opposed to medical marijuana, and they may say, well, yeah, look at all these cuttings. They were in a clone dome, so they must be counted plants. And so now this person had 72 extra plants.
Right.
That the average person would say, well, no, there's
there's
no roots there.
Right. There's no
so
roots.
How could it be a plant?
Right.
And these are things that are left open to debate. And it's something that we have to sort of work our way through. I don't know that the bills that we're talking about are necessarily going to clear any of that up.
No, I don't think they will
do
either.
provide for having testing facilities, and they sort of set the parameters for what they should be testing for and so forth. But at any rate, I mean, you can already have a testing facility,
Right.
and there's ways to work that out so it's being done legally. But at any rate, it just seems unnecessary. And again, sort of setting restrictions on things that aren't fully understood.
Right.
It creates these unnecessary boundaries or hoops that people have to jump through, and previously they did not exist.
And also, furthermore, I think too that we need to kind of raise the bar when it comes to the level of acceptance of, say, probable cause for procuring a search warrant in the first place, especially when it comes or when it's known ahead of time that there is medical marijuana or medical card holders present or active or whatever. If like it just seems it just seems like the second that a tip is given off or an officer may suspect something further, but as soon as the officer finds out the information that it's a medical marijuana or that the person in question may have a medical marijuana card, then I think that we need to raise the bar as to the standard of what do we consider or measure probable cause to be, whether the officers have the right to procure a search warrant. I mean, just because someone could say, well, I know that person's growing medical marijuana, but I think they're over. Is that just it? Is that the only probable cause that the officer needs to procure a warrant at that moment? But I think that there needs to be a whole new level of scrutiny here because, number one, we don't want our prosecution's office handing out warrants like they're Halloween candy. Number two, you have to be highly cautious here because number one, you're violating. You could be the officers. The officers could be number two could be the officers could be violating someone's civil rights at the same time. The presumption clause under Section 4, the direct immunity and the direct presumption that the person is acting within the guidelines of the program. I mean, where does that come into play? I mean,
it is one of those things that's sort of being just walked right over.
Right. It's just they're overlooking that. They're walking right over that presumption clause, and they're just saying, "Oh no, we got to go find out. It's time to do we need to pull a warrant, and this is the evidence we got." But the evidence should be substantial. It should be something substantial, especially when the officers know ahead of time that a medical card holder is in question. I think we need to raise the bar of that scrutiny and then procuring a warrant.
It seems that we need to have a lot of those processes like we're talking about. For people that are legal card holders, a lot of those things need to be reestablished or established. And unfortunately, with the current leadership we have at the state level,
right.
It's sort of the opposite.
Right.
They want to sort of use these things to further their processes and so forth, and they see the loopholes or the gaps, and they're manipulating them or going right after them directly to pose issues in the court system.
Of course.
And I think that we could have had a more cooperative sort of thing going on here, but
namely one specific too on that is the attack of the prosecution on the foundation of the doctor-patient relationship. That's a big one. I know that in many cases that I've read up on or we even traveled to and witnessed myself, even a couple that Michael Camorn has had, especially recently, Jamie's case and namely also she's put into question now the validity of her medical marijuana recommendation. So that's being challenged now. And I mean, I was there at the court that day, and I mean, literally, the court is accepting that 3 separate doctors have now stated that this person is a medical marijuana patient. Now, I understand that they're putting into question the official doctor-patient relationship for the person, but an individual has and should have the right to choose any physician that they want to at any time. Maybe I go to see this doctor for my mental illnesses, but I would rather see this doctor for regular physical checkups or other things. Or maybe my insurance covers this part through this doctor, but maybe I seek the opinion or advice of a different doctor for something else.
It's the end result of that. If it were to go wrong, is okay. Here's the person, they get prosecuted,
right?
And ultimately, let's say they get charged or convicted of medical marijuana. Maybe they had too much or whatever, and it leads back to, well, they didn't have a valid relationship.
Right.
But in this case here, looking at the fact that you had three different physicians
in Jamie's
step up and
case.
say, hey, this person does need to have this medication. So I mean, again, kind of jumping back into this sort of validity of how do we enforce the law, and what are we using our resources on, and in this case here, it's going after a small different fraction of a transaction, and really no relation to what is actually happening. It's kind of sad. It's just you don't want to see that kind of thing happen.
Right.
If somebody was abusing the system, I think when people voted for this, that's what they were thinking is, okay, yeah, if they have it, good, whatever, and if they don't and they're abusing it, then we'll still be able to go after them. And they're just kind of punching through the lines here to go after any little thing they can.
Right, and what I see in, especially in Jamie's case, is I see the courts just literally splitting the hairs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's absurd, and I have great confidence that she has to go before a jury trial now, but I have great confidence that the jury will see this through for what it really is. And when three, especially because that's the one doctor was on the witness stand testifying that day, and he repeated over and over again that that he was in contact with her, and she notified him that she was taking medical marijuana, and even though he couldn't write to her the recommendation. And this is an important part because he worked for McLaren Hospital. So in McLaren Hospital prevents you from any other doctor staff making a recommendation. So you have to understand too. You have to also take into consideration that the doctor is also his job security is put into question or subjection on when he's on the witness stand at this moment. Especially if the doctor feels uncomfortable answering certain questions based on what his employer may or may not think about what his testimony was in court.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And those things, I'm certain, are running through the doctor's mind when he's giving his testimony. But clearly the doctor stated that he believed her condition was improving by the use of medical marijuana. And he knew about it. And he continued to treat her with other conditions and other medications, knowing full well that she had a medical marijuana card and that she was a medical marijuana patient. So even though you might say, well, but she should have got the recommendation from him. I mean, you have to take into consideration that she couldn't get the recommendation from him and had to seek out a different physician for that recommendation. So
it'd be like getting a referral or something.
Yes, and at the same time, it wasn't like she was hiding it from the doctor. She notified him, let him know that I've done this and this is what I'm doing, and letting you know that the medical marijuana is helping me. It's working for me. This is what I experience, and so forth.
Well, I would think that would certainly help a jury understand, in that case there, going to another physician when the doctor, her primary care physician, says, well, I wouldn't do that.
Right.
I wasn't allowed to or whatever.
Right.
But,
and in Jamie's case, too, it's pre the Walsh bills, as we used to call them. It's pre the last 4 bills that went through that reinterpreted the doctor-patient relationship. So it's pre that. So the law is cannot retroactively suggest that she doesn't fall under the doctor-patient recommendation or officially. So I really think that her case is good and she'll come out of there all right. In other news, wow, medical marijuana is just a big topic these days, isn't it? It's just all over the news. It's just day in, day out.
Those little things, it makes people's blood boil who are trying to do it right.
Yeah.
And then, this gets sort of...
and then you see the legal system, subverted and just tear it apart and splitting hairs. I know, it drives me nuts. I sit there in court, just watching it unfold, and it just angers me, and it just makes me sit there and sweat and go, man, these people are really... This is really doing damage, you know what I mean? Even, so...
And half the people in the room are sitting there going, why don't they just legalize the stuff?
Yes! Oh, I know. Yeah, you get that. As soon as you walk out of the courtroom, every cop and guard will tell you, they should just legalize it.
You know what? I don't understand, though. I mean, I'd like to ask these lawmakers this. I mean, I'd flat out... I can understand if this substance was so damn deadly, you'd have this concern about it. But you let stuff get... you got plants in nurseries that are 1,000 times more toxic out there that kids could be exposed to. And you're not concerned about this. You're concerned. It's got to be. They don't want to admit it, but it's all about what can we do to be able to take as much money off it as we can, and that's the only thing they're concerned about.
Yeah, if hemlock were more profitable.
Hemlock is like I walk down the street, I could see wild growing hemlock, which is deadly. It killed Socrates. allegedly. And they're not concerned about that. I mean, kids are passing by that, every damn day.
And they're seeing it and everything.
And they're seeing it. Oh my God, they're seeing it. It's out in the open. Why don't we have a war on hemlock?
War on poison ivy.
Yeah, poison ivy's all over the street. The riverbank across from my house. All over the damn way. That stuff's deadly and really irritating, at least. Yeah. No, you don't get a legislator going up in arms about that. Because all they're worried about is how much money can we get out of here? Can we seize assets? I mean, I'm sorry, but it just galls me.
You're making I know that you're being very cynical about
the politicians are dirtbags.
You got a valid point, John, in the fact that when it all boils down to it, I mean, all the regulation that we've seen on marijuana over the years, even to this day, and the new legislation that's coming down, really is a lot of it's all based on money. It's all based on the control and the money, and who's going to make money on this, who's going to get paid, how's it going to get filtered out, who pays the taxes on this, are there any taxes? Can we tax this? What kind of money are we talking about here?
You think
and that's what the politicians are thinking. That's what the police are thinking. That's what everybody is thinking about it.
Or another thing too, then they'll say, "Why do you got to have this money for?" And they'll say, "Because we have to have more enforcement of laws." Well, which laws are you enforcing? The unneeded laws. That's what needs you to kick your door down for somebody's growing a few pot plants in their house, so they got word of it. Right. They got to have the SWAT team who's going to have outfitted $100,000 per member, but they got to have that so they can go get that pot plant from that guy who's growing it in his backyard.
Who's not even committing a crime. It's a victimless crime all the way around in a sense.
Well, and we're talking about people saying, "Well, why don't they just legalize it?" Well, there's a story. If you've been watching Washington. Kind of interesting. The medical marijuana patients out there who do have recreational marijuana now available are kind of backpedaling and saying, "Man, I kind of wish this wouldn't have happened." Yeah, since they've passed medical marijuana in Washington, now they have the recreational marijuana available as well. The legislature in Washington State is now going back and revamping, or at least attempting to, revamping their medical marijuana laws and sort of retracting. They've got a couple different ways they're looking at doing this. One of them is they're just going to erase the Medical Marijuana Provision Act that they currently have. And so the patients out there who have the current protections under that law would just simply be swept up underneath this new recreational law. And a lot of the patients don't like it because it lowers the amount that they're allowed to have.
Okay.
It lowers the amount that they can grow for themselves.
Oh, okay, sure.
And also subjects them to an additional tax that they're not currently paying.
Sure.
So there's a little bit of blowback there. There's a couple.
Yeah, I would say those are definitely negative things. Sure. If I was there, and
somebody's already used to that.
Yeah, I would be upset too.
There's two different bills that are rolling through their legislature out there. One of them's from the Senate, one of them's from the House. But one of them would merge the old system with the new recreational industry, and then the other one would force out or close the dispensaries that operate for medical purposes, and then they'd have to operate under the recreational purpose.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And then cultivation, like currently right now, medical patients out there can grow up to 15 plants for themselves. It would lower that down to 6 plants.
Oh, man.
Well,
you know what that is.
They're not happy about it. So I guess be careful when you're walking outside the courtroom there.
Sure.
Why don't they just legalize it?
Right.
I guess that's one of the things you got to look at is, well, if they do legalize it, then where does it leave the patients at?
Of course. And also, this, I venture to say that, and I guess this will probably lead us into our next subject, which would probably be the Sanjay Gupta. Did you see Weed?
I'm sick of him.
Did you see? Did you watch the Weed 2 thing last night?
I did not. No.
I did. I watched it. But
what did Sanjay have to say?
Sanjay is
I'll
saying.
see the light now.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying.
Have you tried this Kush? This stuff is good.
He's a lot of the things that he's saying is right. He's pointing out. He pointed out the government has had a patent on marijuana cannabinoids for years.
True.
At the same time, saying marijuana is a Schedule 1 with no medical value and high abuse potential.
Sounds like Sanjay's been watching the G3C podcast.
Right. And and it's like I almost feel like calling him or like emailing him, going, "Hey, welcome to the club, there, Sanjay.
Yeah.
It took you a long time. It took you long enough." You know what I mean? But it's so funny because honestly, I was with my friends watching this the other night. Last night, and I even said to my friends, I'm like, don't you guys remember me like saying this like over 15 years ago? Everything that he's saying, I was like spouting off like years ago about the medical efficacy and all this and that, and just but let's jump right to the forefront of it. the one thing I gotta say that disturbs me about the Sanjay Gupta thing, and that I think that what's happening now is that medical marijuana becomes more mainstream, and we begin talking about it more fluently in mainstream, the conversation is going to be constantly pulled toward a more restrictive policy. Let's treat this like actual medicine and put it into the hands of the pharmaceuticals.
Absolutely.
And that's where this is all going.
Yeah.
And
that's why Sanjay's speaking up.
And that's why Sanjay's speaking up about
it. They got him in the back pocket of GW.
Of course, GW's, yeah.
That's why I don't like it.
And I don't like it either. And I don't like it because, and let's explain why I don't like it. Because I don't like it because it's like all of us. It's like we're sitting here doing all the legwork to break down the social barriers, create social change. You know what I'm saying? The people put or vote on constitutional amendments like we did in Michigan here in 2008. We changed the law, and now we open the door. We're allowed to do these kind of things. We're allowed to care for patients. We're allowed to create a business based on this model, create an income, pay tax on that income. And then all of a sudden now it's like the pharmaceutical companies are just going to want to come in, roll right over on us, and just take it all away from us. And they're going. And I venture to say that they're even going to try to change the rhetoric and the language, as they already have in many cases. You can point it out if you read between the lines, where they try to. Now they're trying to identify and isolate the compounds, put them up by their name, and no longer use the word cannabis or marijuana. Obviously we all in the movement pretty much feel that cannabis, should be the primary name used, not pot, weed, or marijuana. It's just simply because of outdated social reasons, you know what I'm saying, and for the logistics of it. But furthermore, it's. I don't like it because it's just another example of big corporations and big pharma trying to totally restrict and isolate this and monopolize this only for their control so that they can be the ones only to make money off of it while no one else can. And meanwhile, putting you in jail for being able to grow your own medicine in your backyard. How dare you be able to grow your own food or your own medicine or whatever
treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, how dare you?
No, that's the pharmaceutical job. All right.
That's my rant. That's my rant of the week. Okay.
You do bring a point up though. There are actually areas where people who want to grow a garden and they're trying to do organic and stuff, and they're trying to be as considerate.
Oh, yeah.
And they've had the charges brought against them and complaints filed. So it's like these busybodies out there who want to change your life because they don't like what you're doing.
And there's the same thing goes for chickens and chicken coops and being able to have.
Thinking about chickens.
Yeah, and being
Japanese processing or China.
Sure. I mean, and they and so they want to push these restrictions too. On top of that, then we've got another issue with the drug testing companies. They want to start drug testing everybody.
Well,
and
get paid for doing that.
Yeah, and well, gee, the guy that gets paid for doing drug tests wants to drug test more people. Imagine that.
How do we increase our? I got an idea.
Yeah, where did our constitutional rights fall into this? I mean, when did we just forget, that we have constitutional rights and amendments that protect us from unwarranted searches and seizures?
One legislature in this area, that he actually owns a company that does the blood test, and he's proposing more increased range of blood, for a reason why they'd have to have blood tests. That's a big duh. I mean, isn't that conflict of interest? He owns the labs that does this kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you're absolutely right. You're talking about Sanjay, becoming more mainstream. And there's an article on Leaf Science. You can check this out about 7 things about Sativex. But the interesting part about the article is, and Sativex is made by GW Pharmaceutical. It's a spray. Mm-hmm. It contains a 1:1 ratio of THC and CBD, so it's a complete cannabis spray, if you will. And they're very close, they say. GW says that they're very close to getting this approved by the FDA. Mm-hmm. And also, obviously, if that happens, they will hand in hand be looking at doing some sort of rescheduling so that the substance can be made available.
Sure.
I
think the
rescheduling that we are having this mainstream push right now.
Oh yeah.
And at the same time, here come the pharmaceutical companies.
Sure.
So to me, it just makes me think that guys like Sanjay and all these other whatevers. I mean, they're just as corporately backed as our politicians are.
Yep.
And you're right. I think that they're just sort of creaking the door open far enough
to
let them get their own foot in, but nobody else's. And Sativex, you talk about some of the CBD only legislation that's been talked about in the media. And it's a full compound. It contains THC and CBD, so you can't really say it's one or the other. And I guess the one thing about Sativex that most people may not be aware of is that it's expensive.
Right.
You're talking about
the
annual prescription. This is cited here from the London School of Medicine. An annual prescription of Sativex costs about $16,000. So that's well over $1,000 a month. Obviously,
I mean, I would venture to say probably 2/3 or more of the patients in Michigan could not even afford that.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
You know how much Simpson oil you could get for $16,000? I mean, you could be having a cup of that a day.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that's just.
And again, but they're trying to make this out. Well, it's dosed and so on and so forth. I mean, this is nothing more than somebody could make on their own.
Yeah, right. And I something else I want to interject too is here, and what Sanjay and Gupta and others aren't pointing out too, and this is kind of disturbs me, is that as in the world of cannabis, and I didn't really know this until about 4 years ago, because before the medical marijuana law, we only had one kind here in Michigan, right. And so, but up to about 4 years ago, I really realized it really impacted me as to how many variety of strains exist out there. And every single strain of cannabis out there is so radically different from the next.
Yep.
I mean, it is like such a spectrum.
Yeah.
It's like looking out into the galaxy in a sense, and going, there's
all
like
the stars are the same.
Yeah, all the stars are the same. Yeah, they're all the same size. They all have the same. Yeah, that's like. I mean, you're exactly right, man. You were right on page with me on that one, and it's just like, and I mean, when I have grown strains for my patients, and then of course I read up on the strain, and then when I produce it, and all of a sudden I go, wow, it's just really a radical difference between this strain and this strain. And I thought there might even be some similarities, but no, totally radical. And then by the very fact of the nature, you have a plant of two sexes that's offering each plant, the parent of the plant is offering its own set of genetics contribution to its offspring. So just like people and dogs and this and that, where our genetics are combined, through a sex process that is, we have, just like a human is 23 chromosomes equals 46. You know what I mean? So that it's that's why we all have characteristics of our parents. So the same goes for plants. And it's like the same thing. And I mean, and could the possibilities be there almost endless when it comes right down to the actual science? When science is able to,
absolutely,
400 and some odd cannabinoid compounds that in that plant, and you're going to tell me that.
No, you just need Sativex.
Yeah, you just need Sativex. Oh, well, we only produce this one, but it's all you need. That's this one.
That's all you need.
That's all you need. That's all.
It's kind of interesting. You were talking about the rescheduling and so on, and they're saying that they don't need to reschedule in order to make Sativex available through pharmaceutical.
I want to make
because it has its own classification.
I want to make one more quick point. One of my patients, Wes. He's been in here on the show.
Yep.
Wes, he talked to me the other day. I gave him one particular strain because he said he really liked that strain. Well, I gave him, his weekly dose or whatever of that strain, but then he calls me like right up and he goes, you know what? He says, I preferred when you gave me multiple strains at one time. He says, because, I like that strain, but I like that strain at a different time of day or a different, at a different, moment. And, or maybe I prefer this other one in the morning and I prefer that one in the evening. Or, maybe I don't like to consume this all day because I want to feel differently. And so again, I had to go right back to him and give him some variety. You know what I'm saying? And that's I like doing that. I like variety myself. I think variety is the spice of life. Why should we try to?
Well, and you find that with your patients, a lot of times, if you continue to supply them with the same strain over and over and over again, it just instantly becomes, or over time, it becomes less effective.
Exactly.
And so you do need that variety to sort of trick the body. And make it react the way that it would if they didn't have it all the time.
Totally agree with you on that one. Totally. And I mean, not that you and I have all this science to back up what we're saying, but you and I have experience in this enough to know this.
The patients are all saying the same thing.
Exactly, saying the same thing.
It's got to be taken into account.
Absolutely.
I think this is interesting, though. Sativex has got its own scientific name and its own class called nabiximols. So I don't know. Maybe you could come up with your own class for Simpson oil or
What,
BHO.
what about this? What about this?
Bahixamol.
What about this? What if all of a sudden they do deschedule this? What if all of a sudden they some pharmaceutical companies begin patenting certain strains or cannabinoids or whatever that are found in certain strains? Does that mean that I got the right to go patent some of my strains too? Can I go? Oh, I got the patent on this one. You guys can't have this one. This one's mine.
Send a patent.
You know what I mean?
Well, if you can buy a senator, or a representative member, yeah.
I'm just going to have to become one of those people, John. Eventually, I'm going to have to become one of those.
We'll take up the money so you can buy one. We'll just take up the money so you can buy one.
I'm just going to become one of those. Just start a revolution and vote them all out. You know what I'm saying?
I'd like to see them all in prison, but that's a different.
No, like vote them all out. Just vote them. You know what I'm saying? Just let's get some new people in there, some new ideas.
Yeah. The thing is, I think you attract the same type of people in politics. You have a tendency to attract the same.
But I think the political climate is changing enough, John, that you're starting to see people step up to the plate. Steve Sharp actually was a guy that put a post on Facebook. Was it yesterday or today? And he asked everybody, he says, hey, I'm doing a little poll to find out if I should run for state rep, and we were all like, yeah, like, do it, like, we'll all support you,
But I think unless you get rid of all these people first and then get the new crop in, because I think the older will take the new. That's a problem.
They do. You're right. You got a point there, John. But I also truly believe that the new can bring about change in the old also, and I've found that. I mean, just by my presence alone, being at my township trustee position, brings a new level of conversation, brings new debates, brings new counter arguments to the every issue that comes up. So anytime that someone thinks that they really can't, even if their position or local position is not big enough to where they can make a lot of impact, I want you to reconsider that, because I think that people can. I really think that people can make a difference in the political system. When
I was taking a class over the basic class in government, American government, over at Mott, Mr. Roush was teaching it. He drilled into our heads that the most powerful person politically is the precinct man. The precinct people. If you get the precinct, the grassroots, if you get those people on the same things, on the same issues, and then that goes up, it's like it's built from the ground up. Yeah, you can have an impact. But the thing is, the system's so corrupt now, I don't know if that's still a whole truth. That was really some years ago.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't know much about that aspect of it to know how much that comes into play, but yeah.
I don't know, it seems like a mud puddle, you know what I mean? Like, you got the mud puddle, the water's all dirty, it's dark brown, and then you brush in some fresh dirt into there, and for a little while, it changes the color of the mud puddle. It turns like a tannish color.
Sure.
And then it sort of mixes in, and then the next thing you know, it looks like the mud puddle did before you put the fresh dirt in.
Yeah, a better analogy would be like, if the mud puddle is the system, and you got to go into it to get, obviously you're going to get dirty too.
That's what I'm saying. So you just, and it ends up just staying mud.
But you're a cleaner dirty than the other dirt, right? Yeah, I guess. That's what about degrees of dirtiness, I guess.
I guess. We've got like 5 minutes left. What do we got to wrap up? We got to wrap this up fast.
Study here. This is why marijuana makes you paranoid.
Oh, new article?
Yeah.
Okay.
It says here, this is a report. This is from LeafScience.com. This research by Canadian scientists suggests that marijuana may enhance fear-based learning by acting on pathways in the, now forgive me, amygdala. So you have
amygdala.
Oh, thanks, John.
Yeah, it's in the brain. Yeah,
I figured it was in the brain. Let's see. A team
big word, John.
University of Western Ontario found that THC intensifies how rats reacted to certain smells they were trained to fear. So at any rate, it's kind of interesting. It says, we know where the receptors are, we know their function, we know how the neurons make their own cannabinoids, said a study author Dr. Patel in a university release. It says, now we can see how the system is affected by stress and chronic marijuana use. It might fundamentally change our understanding of cellular communication in the, say it again, John?
Amygdala, yeah.
Amygdala, all right. So the study here links marijuana directly to the area of the brain that regulates the fight or flight response, and this response is part of the body's overall process of reacting to factors of stress or threat. And it says here, why certain people feel more anxious after using marijuana and others is still unclear. Researchers used antibody-labeled imaging techniques to look at the activity of the brain or the activity of the body's own cannabinoids rather than those derived from the plant. Humans and many animals naturally produce a set of marijuana-like chemicals known as endocannabinoids, and the study was conducted on mice, showed for the first time that endocannabinoids are produced by nerve cells within the amygdala. And that's today's key word, amygdala.
It's a word of the week.
I always thought people were paranoid when they're smoking weed because they're afraid they're going to get busted. That's what I always thought fed into it.
Apparently, that's not the case. There's a scientific thing behind this. It's triggering something in the brain that has to deal with your fight or flight syndrome. So,
Though, I do think that there is something to what John's saying, though, because I think that if you have any kind of a scenario where you're heavily medicated on cannabis and something bad goes on, or like, well, I mean, namely like something like the cops kick your door in or something like that, I think it may heighten your anxiety because of the stress. The stress may be causing, or like what the study is suggesting, you may be triggering that part of the brain, or those cannabinoids, your natural ones and the ones that you've introduced. So it may flood your system with that anxiety kind of a issue. But
it does say that
I would say it's environmentally induced, though, that kind of
potentially.
reaction.
I mean, there's a little bit of science behind it. It's saying that those receptors, are kicking on. But it does say that over time, regular marijuana use can desensitize those sensors. So that explains why, the more novice cannabis user may become paranoid. But the person who is a regular consumer sort of, isn't really affected by that.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. Last thing I've got for you, this is an article. It's 5 things about CBD. Let me pull it up here. Give me just a second. Obviously, CBD is the other cannabinoid. Of course, as you pointed out, there's hundreds of these cannabinoids.
Right.
They just seem to be stuck on CBD right now. CBD or CBD.
Well, the one thing I will say about the Sanjay Gupta thing last night is at least they did point out too that CBD also works better with THC as a combination. So I think that we can't rule out THC as being non-therapeutic in some ways. It is, especially on the mental illness aspects, mental conditions, post-traumatic stress disorder, and so forth. I think that THC and the psychotropic effect that it has on us helps not only in measures of pain, because I've always said, people ask me like, well, does marijuana reduce pain? Well, I said, yes, well, CBDs and other compounds do, but I also believe that THC helps distract the mind from pain. So I think that and I've always said that. I said that 15 freaking years ago, and Sanjay Gupta said that last night on CNN.
I think you're absolutely right.
I think that's
GW isn't making Sativex for no reason.
Oh, of course,
which is a equal compound there.
Oh yeah. So, but even people get sometimes feel slight euphoria or a high from the Sativex even.
Well, yeah, because it does have THC.
Because it does have THC in it, sure. So,
all right, 5 things here. CBD is a key ingredient in cannabis. Obviously, we knew that. CBD is non-psychoactive if it's taken by itself, which there's not too many CBD-only things out there. Like we talked about the strain last week, Charlotte's Web, which is developed for children with epilepsy who need a high CBD dosage in their marijuana, but it's not grown without THC. I think a lot of people
misinterpret that. Sure.
Yep. All right, so CBD is non-psychoactive. Next thing is CBD has a wide range of medical benefits. I think we've talked about that quite extensively on the show and all the different effects that it has there. It also reduces the negative effects of THC. So some of that paranoia we're talking about can be subverted through some of the CBD that's present there as well. So that may explain why some strains may give you a heightened sense of paranoia or something, maybe because they don't have CBD and they only have THC, which we've seen that in certain tested strains.
I actually grew a strain one time. It was a sweet satellite, and it tested out at the when I had it tested at the G3C there. It has tested out 10% THC, which is quite low for the average of THC. But the CBD content was up quite a few points, way higher than normal. And my patients, they told me that when they consumed it, they said that they didn't get the anxiety high that they did from other strains, and they also felt like they got a much increased body high, like a much more
Like it relaxed their
a
body.
relaxing, calming euphoria than as opposed as a real head high.
Right.
So they, I was
Which
quite
makes sense with the
yes,
THC being psychoactive.
right, and I was quite surprised because people actually, and in some cases, people actually told me that they felt like they got higher, and these are the words they used, but they felt like they got higher off of the lower THC stuff than they did the other stuff, because maybe there's some other compounds working in addition to that maybe we didn't test for.
Well, and I think you look at that word higher, and in some cases, that's just a patient telling you that they felt better.
Or right,
You know
exactly.
what I mean?
Yes,
So they
it's
got
just a
more
way.
relief.
Sure, it's a different way of saying it. Sure.
All right, and the last reason or last fact about CBD is that it's still illegal. A lot of people are getting kind of confused and thinking that you can make a CBD product and it's going to somehow be approved by the feds or
right,
that
just because
okay
it's just because it doesn't get you high.
It is still part of the marijuana plant, still included in the Schedule 1 classification of drugs. Interesting note, it's a Schedule 2 in Canada.
Interesting.
But
now
that makes sense because you can get Sativex in Canada.
Oh, okay. Well, now, if they drug tested you, would they? If you took only CBD, they wouldn't be able to drug test you for that because the drug test is actually looking for THC, correct?
Well, that gets us back to that crime lab testing thing that we're talking about. And
right.
Are they testing for THC? I think what they're this is just an assumption, but I think what they're testing for are THCA, which would be acids.
Okay.
It would include CBD along with it.
Right.
So it's the total, like when you look at your test results, and it'll say THC-A down at the bottom, and that's just everything added together. And I think that's what they're testing there instead of breaking it down on an individual level. But CBD is a part of the plant, still Schedule 1 here in the U.S. It's a 2 in Canada. The FDA recently approved a pharmaceutical version of CBD for clinical trials. We talked about that last week, but at any rate, it's still illegal. So if you hear otherwise, you're being fooled. But and it's been patented, of course, in 2003.
Yep.
So you can't patent that one.
No, but I can patent this other one just because it looks like the color. You can't grow that one. That one's mine.
That cannabinoid, I'm gonna
do like the what do you call that, the poor man's patent where you certified mail something to yourself. So it has like a post date on it and you leave it sealed. They call it the poor man's. You know what I mean? Because if you take it to court, you can win. You know what I mean? Okay. Based on the.
So you just put a couple grains of keef in there. Be like, in there. That's the
certified mail to yourself, right?
CGBV.
Yeah. See, I did this back in 2004.
Just look up all.
I was ahead of everyone else.
Just look up all the patents on cannabis and pick the cannabinoid that they haven't patented yet. Right. And that one's yours.
That was right.
It's just like a star. Be like, they didn't name that one yet. Calling it Eric.
Yeah. Better. Yeah. I'm gonna get like a real up close picture under a microscope. Take a picture up and I go, that one's mine. This one's mine. You can have all the rest of them. This one's mine though.
No, not that one.
That's right.
Well, all right. That's about all the news we have for you this week. I thank you for joining us. I did want to make a quick announcement. We do have DJ Short returning to the club. He'll be there April 1st in the afternoon.
All right.
And then he'll also be there April 8th, 10th, and 11th in the evening and offering classes as well. So
awesome.
If you guys want to spend some time with the master cannabis breeder, DJ Short, he will be at the G3C upcoming here in April. Of course, we've got our 420 party we're planning for. It's going to happen on 4/19. We're so excited about it. We're going to do it a day early.
Nice.
And that'll be a Saturday there in April. And, of course, we have our first Soup Kitchen of April, which is the first Friday in April. And that's coming up as well. So
nice.
That's it for our announcements. But, Eric, thanks for coming to the studio today, man.
Yep.
Good to have you. John, thanks for being with us and making it happen. We appreciate it, as always, here at FlintTalkRadio.com. And, guys, thanks for joining us this week. This has been the Genesee County Compassion Club Show. Guys, stay safe out there.